Thank you so much. I appreciate it. So thank you all for coming today. I appreciate your time. And I think it's really exciting that all of you have come here and you're interested in this topic. I know that everybody right now is trying to figure out what to do with AI. They've been told that it's going to change everything. There's all this hype around it, and people are just sort of like, where do I go? What's the right tool? There's all this stuff, and everybody's pulling me in a million directions. And so today, the hope is that this experience will help you sort of narrow your focus and encourage you and inspire you to get started building your own stuff with AI, whether you are experienced with tools that are similar, or whether you're a developer yourself, or whether you've never built software before. So before we begin, I think if you want to participate, it will be important for you to take out your phone and go to Lovable's website. You can actually build the app from your phone. You don't need a laptop. And so it's lovable.dev. And in the top right corner, you can create your account. You don't have to do this if you don't want to, but if you want to participate, we'll be walking through Lovable on your phone or your laptop together during the workshop portion. So I'll give you a minute to go ahead and do that. And while you're doing that, I think it's important for you to understand, like, who the heck is this guy, Andy, on the stage? Why should I listen to him? Why is he here? And so just like really briefly, a little bit about me. So I am a forum leader at OpenAI's official forums. And so the forums are a place where we basically fulfill OpenAI's mission of AI adoption for the benefit of all of humanity. And my main responsibility is to encourage AI adoption in local communities. So you can see there on the screen that I'm one of the local leaders for California. I've done things like host AI film festivals in Orange County just to sort of guide everyone on the future of creativity and work. Now that we're moving into this AI-driven world, everyone is afraid, I think rightfully so, frankly speaking, that AI is going to take their job, it's going to change a lot, and so I think there's a real need for us all to just come together and have a conversation about it and talk about it so we can figure out how we move forward together. And so that's what I do as the forum leader at OpenAI, and I'm also a founder at Lucky Day Labs, which is my own company. It's an AI automation and app design and consulting business, so I basically help small businesses, entrepreneurs, founders make things with AI and help guide their strategy. So I'm sure all of you have heard of at least one of these tools. These are all variations of AI code-making tools and coding tools. They're all a little bit different. There's even more than this that are on the slide, but I tried to get as many as I could, so apologies if your favorite one is not on here. But they all sort of have their own personalities, and I like to describe them as cars, right? Like each car on paper, it pretty much seems the same, but until you get into the driver's seat and you actually drive it for yourself, they all have these like little quirks and they all feel sort of different. And so I strongly encourage you, if you have the time and the resources, to give some of these a try, just to experience them for yourself and see what works best for your use case. But today we're going to be using Lovable specifically. But as you begin this journey where you start making your own stuff, I think it's important that I sort of give you a few tools and mental models that are going to help you on your journey. And one of those tools is just to understand the life cycle of startups. And what I see with a lot of people is they've gotten overwhelmed and confused with what experts to listen to. Like they hear all of these people shouting AI from the rooftops, and they're like, this person says Lovable is bad, and this person says OpenAI is bad, and this person says it's good, and this person yada, yada, yada. And it's like, who do I listen to, and how do I know which path to take? And so this tool, understanding the life cycle of startups, is going to be extremely critical. So there's actually two different types of people. One is neither better or worse than the other. So there are the explorers, and these are the type of people that they basically go out into the wilderness where there's no rules, there's no safety. They've got to figure things out on the fly. They've got to figure out where to lay the train track so that civilization can come in and it can build. So that would be considered like your early stage startup, right? They're starting something new, they have a new product, they're going into a new market, and they're exploring, right? Then you have the track layers, and the track layers are the people that come along after the explorers, and they just, once the land has been surveyed and explored and the territory has been mapped, their focus is to just lay the train tracks as quickly as possible and as efficiently as possible. So these are the type of people that, maybe they're not going to go off into the wilderness on their own, but they're really, really good at repeating the same thing over and over and over again and getting like very small fractions of efficiency gains. And so if you ask these two people the same question, they're going to give you different answers because they have different mindsets and they come from different worlds. And so just be wary of that when you're talking about basically anything, especially in tech and AI. Who are you talking to? Is it like a track layer in this large enterprise company? Or is it like an explorer at this small startup? So where are we right now? So the current tech landscape, we're in the explorer era. For the past 10 years or so, technology was mostly matured, and it was just large companies creating efficiency gains and further capturing the market. With the birth of AI, everything's changing right now. All of the companies are trying to do something new and different and change their product. There's all these new AI startups. And so if you're here, you're more likely to be on the explorer side, right? You probably have your own startup or you've tried some of these tools. And again, I want to emphasize that neither of these is better or worse than the other. They're just good for certain things, right? And when I should say your startup is successful, one day you're going to need track layers once you've proven your product and you want to scale it. You're going to need those people that are experts in like executing rules, right, as efficiently as possible. And then another tool I think it's going to be useful for you to understand is that there are different phases of innovation. Calling back to what I mentioned earlier, where if you ask someone the same question, they're going to tell you a different answer based on what type of person they are. Neither is better or worse than the other, they're just different. So you have the innovators in the beginning, that's a very small fraction of the population, and these are the people that like the day AI was announced, they were immediately like downloading the models and they were trying everything, and it was hallucinating and it was making all these mistakes, and they didn't care just because they love this new technology and they want to innovate as fast as possible, right? They'll put up with errors and bugs and glitches and things not working just because it's fun, right? So you're probably in this innovator category if you're here today, or there's also the early adopters, and so like those are the people that would get like the latest iPhone like the day it comes out, for instance, right? They don't care that there might be a risk that like the new software is buggy. They don't care that like it hasn't been like established yet and there might not be all the glitches ironed out, right? They're just early adopters because they love the space, they love the technology, they want to try it out. So you've got to keep this in mind when you're building your products with Lovable or just life in general, because these are different segments of the market of people that are going to use your product, and they are okay or not okay with certain things based on who they are, right? So for instance, innovators and early adopters, they'll put up with like little bugs or glitches or maybe things not being perfect, right? And so just remember that when you're building something. For a product to take off, it's got to get to about 10% market share around there, where it reaches a tipping point, as you can see there by the orange arrow. And then that's the early majority. And these are the people that they're willing to try something new. They might have an open mind. They're not quite as open-minded when it comes to like their phone or a new technology as the early adopters or the innovators would be. But they're much less likely to put up with like glitches and bugs and things not working properly. And they're going to be a little bit more skeptical. Like, I already have an iPhone. Why should I get a new iPhone? Sort of thing, right? And then you have the late majority, and these are the people that they're sort of really only on technology because everybody else is doing it. And so they're not going to adopt your product or what your idea is unless it like is close to perfect and it works extremely well and efficiently. And there's a reason for them to use it other than, it's just the new thing, right? Because they don't really care about it being new as the selling point. And then you have the laggards. They're the people that only use it because they have no other choice. So all of this sort of mirrors into the life cycle of a startup, and these are the phases of innovation that when your startup and your product scales, you're going to meet. So just keep that in mind as you are becoming a builder, or you're becoming a better builder if you already are one. So before we begin the workshop, I know you're probably tired of hearing me talk all this and you just want to get to the tools, but I thought that it would be great to just sort of provide an inspiring video to just sort of get your juices flowing. And this is a music video that's by a band called The Midnight. They're a synth pop group. I don't know if you've heard of them. Maybe you have, maybe you haven't. And this song is really about technology and innovation and computers and making things. When computers first started coming onto the scene, we got coding, and it was this beautiful situation where you could make something, but you had to basically understand this language of software development and coding in order to take advantage of it. And now we're getting into this new phase where you don't necessarily have to understand that, right?
A computer is an educational device. It is in fact a direct reflection of your own imagination, your own intelligence. And once you are given the freedom in which to create things and to see the immediate response on the screen, then it becomes a very enjoyable experience. You go on to involve yourself in many other things.
It seems to be a very fantastic and hypnotic field. Once you start, you just can't stop. It's something you can't explain.
To the question of what is all this microcomputer and computer business going to do to our society? The case is that we are humans and we are much more adaptable to our environment than the computer is to its own.
If you look at society as simply the collective contribution of millions of human beings who carry in themselves certain power and influence and emotion, and every time you turn the switch off of one of those persons, you've dampened the glow. It's the fundamental question of whether this society is going to find a way to make itself as rich and as powerful, and if you will, as beautiful as potentially it can be.
Well, like adventures, you gotta meet people and all this. It's sort of like an adventure, big adventure. It's fun.
So I need to be clear, while the song is by The Midnight, this was a fan-made music video, so I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope it also kind of got the juices flowing and helped inspire you of what is possible now that you are able to become a builder of your own software if you weren't a developer before, or if you were a developer, how much more powerful you are about to become. So enough of the talking and the sappy movie and inspiration stuff, and let's start to go into building your own web app. So go ahead and take out your phone, or you go to lovable.dev if you haven't already. And what we're going to do is we're going to prompt Lovable together with the same exact prompt, and we're going to basically do an experiment, and we're going to compare and see like how your version is different than your version, and etc. Now, the Lovable account is free, so you just got to make sure that you've signed up in the top right corner if you just visit lovable.dev. So I have the prompt right here. So what we're going to do today is sort of start with this basic prompt. So you can go ahead and start copying that on your own device. And then I'm going to walk you through and explain sort of how Lovable works and the best practices and tips and tricks as we go along. A lot of it can get complicated, and so I don't want to overwhelm you as we go through this. And there's a lot that this can do that's much more advanced that we won't get into today, but I definitely encourage you to explore it on your own, and I'll be a resource as well. So Lovable is pretty cool because if you see this plus button right here, there's different options where you could attach like a screenshot or an image if you want to include a file in your app, or if you want to like take a screenshot of an app that you love or a website that you love and you want to tell it to, use inspiration from that, for instance, or if you're someone who's in the design field already, you know what Figma is. It's a design tool, so you can import your Figma designs. And then connect databases is a little tricky, so we won't get into that today, but Lovable is basically going to be coming out with their own database platform, so you don't have to use an external one. And that's been one of the biggest pain points with all of these AI builders the past 2 years is the database, and it's caused a lot of issues, which is probably why you've heard like, oh, these AI tools are not good at coding, or they're not good for your company if you want to release something. It's because of that database problem. And so all of these companies are very aware of that, and they've been working very hard to fix it. And Lovable is going to create their own database, basically. It's in a private beta. So this product is about to get even better very quickly. So just keep that in mind. I want you to sort of throw out all of the preconceived notions of like what people have told you about what these AI tools are capable of, because I speak to like even experienced founders in tech and in the AI space, and they still know stuff that's like outdated from like 3 months ago, because all of these companies are just releasing new things every single day. So that's why I encourage you to do what we're doing here today, which is like, you've just got to like try it out yourself. You've got to get in the car and you got to drive it before you choose to buy it. And I encourage you to experiment with a lot of other things. So hopefully you've gotten everything entered in the prompt now. And so now we're just going to start. So let's hope that the demo gods are with us today and this demo actually works. And so just like that, it's going to start building it up, and you can see the different steps that it's going to go through. And it's going to lay out how it's going to build the product, right? And so you can read through, and then you can see the progress of what it's doing. And I love that they show what the AI is doing and what it's thinking, because it's very much aligned with my philosophy of, AI should be a collaborator. It shouldn't be doing everything for you. It should be making your life easier, but you should be in the driver's seat. And so you've got to like manage it and know what's going on at a high level. And you can stop it at any time if it starts to do something that you don't want it to do.
Can you go back to the prompt once again for a second?
Yeah, absolutely. He has to go back to the prompt. Yes?
Is that like sort of versioning where you can, like say, like hold this and then it keeps going, and then if it gets out of
Absolutely. So he asked, for those in the audience, if there's any sort of versioning or history, right? And so we're going to get to that, but just quickly, if you look up here, there's this history section right here, and it'll allow you to go back in case something happens that you don't want to, or you want to undo a change, right? So, and then when you get into things like storing it on GitHub, for instance, which is, if for people that don't know, GitHub is basically like another place where you can store all of your software code, so you can take it different places and save it in different ways. That also has something called branching and versioning, but that's going to be a little bit more advanced than what we're going to talk about today. So, but thank you for the question. Absolutely.
Can you instruct it to scrape any open source GitHub code?
So the question was, can you instruct it to scrape open source GitHub code? So yes and no. There's different tools like Firecrawl that have APIs specifically that are designed for scraping. It gets into a little bit sketchy territory because depending on your region and the laws, like you're allowed to scrape certain things and you're not allowed to scrape other things. You can also provide it a code base. So if you don't want to scrape, you can like take your GitHub code base, you can copy the file and you can put it into this prompt in Lovable and it can guide what you're trying to do. So, but as we can see here, we have the first demo. And so it outlines what it did and how it thought through the app that it made. And so Lovable will give you a few options to help sort of hold your hand and guide you through this process, right? And they usually will come at the end of this prompt here. And so you can see there's a visit docs, which I encourage you to do in the future. And it basically, Lovable has provided a bunch of different stuff that's going to help you if you need to go in depth on something like crawling an API, like that, the question we had before. And then this is that database that I mentioned to you. I see this because I'm on the beta, but you probably don't see this yet, but you might see something that looks a little bit different. And so from here, you can sort of start previewing the app and you can start playing around with it. So like we have Sarah Johnson here, Michael Chen. We can see that it's sort of reactive. I can see that it sort of filters, right? So if we want to test this filter, right, I can just type Michael, and so it looks like the filter's working. Let's see if it's mobile friendly. So if I click this right here, you can change the layout so you can experiment on different devices. Like, what is this going to look like on my customer's laptop? What is this going to look like on their iPad? What is this going to look like on their phone, right? And so that's up here. And so if I just click this and cycle to the mobile view that we're on now, you can get an idea of what it's going to look like on a mobile phone, right? And so there might be this is really important because there might be some sort of visual glitch that is not quite formatted properly that we want to fix. So let's try adding a new contact. And I encourage you to do this as well on your own device. And let's hit add contact. And so we got a notification that it was added, right? And so it looks like that's all working. So that's great. This is a really good starting point. Yes?
I apologize, from where I'm sitting, I can't read the original prompt. I know you've read it before, but can you reread it now that we're seeing this, please?
Sure. So he asked if I could reread the original prompt. So the original prompt is, let's build a micro CRM that is mobile friendly with a responsive design. I want the design to be a mixture of Art Deco and minimalism. It should be quick and easy to add a contact, and then view them with a card system. So this is something that gets into what you probably heard as prompt engineering. Some call it context engineering, where you're really managing the AI, sort of like think of it like your intern, or I like to say it's sort of, think of it like a genius child that knows everything, but that's still a child, so you have to sort of guide it and hold its hand along, right? So The reason I used a phrase like make sure it's mobile friendly with a responsive design means that even though like Lovable already has this in mind where the AI will try to make it mobile friendly, you're like specifically emphasizing this just to double check and make sure that when it's designing everything in the layout, it's mobile friendly. Yes?
So imagine I did exactly what you did and I got what came out. I was like, well, what if sometimes I search Mike, but I'm looking for Michael, and I wanted to have the kind of context to know if I search for a name like Mike or Johnny to also look for Jonathan or John. Is this smart enough, strong enough to be able to do that, or would that need specific coding?
It depends on how large the database is and how your CRM is laid out. If you have a more complex database, you might need to use a third-party integration via an API, or you could have the search run off of like a very lightweight LLM, right? And then you could do more advanced searching. But part of what this does is it just gives you like a basic search filter out of the box just to get started.
So I'd have to connect the search bar to an LLM in order to get that kind of functionality?
Yeah, that would be one implementation. And sorry, I forgot to repeat. The question is if we wanted to do advanced searches like nicknames and things like that with the search bar, how we would do that. Yes?
Is that something that you could ask in the prompt? Like, hey, I want this functionality. What is the best way for me to prompt you to get this outcome?
Yeah, so the question is that something that you could ask in the prompt to get that sort of outcome? So I think that's a great question. It's a little bit more advanced than what I want to do today, but I think this is a good opportunity to just showcase like how you're gonna move forward on your own when I'm not here with you, right? Because the AI is very much, again, a collaborative tool that you can ask questions for, and I strongly encourage you to be curious and like ask those curious questions to the AI, and think of it as like a thought partner, right? So, for instance, let's brainstorm different ways that we can make the search functionality more advanced to support something like nicknames or short versions of common names. For example, Rob for Robert, right? And so you saw here that I clicked this blue chat button, and that sort of changes the mode of Lovable. It's not gonna build something for you yet. It's more just gonna talk to you about it, like have a conversation, right? And so you really wanna lean on the chat function if you're not quite sure where to go or if you're curious about something, because now you can just really have a conversation. So let's try it. I have no idea what this is gonna say, so we'll see what it has to say. I think it'll be interesting. So one thing you have to be aware of is that all of these AI agents, they are programmed to have a personality of being a helpful assistant out of the box, right? And so you'll see that it says, that's a great idea, right? Right, and so just be careful. So one of my favorite things, I love that these tools are very encouraging because I think that a lot of us, frankly, we need encouragement. Like especially when we're trying something new that's never been done before, or people say, "Oh, that's never going to work." Like it helps to have like something or someone in your corner, like giving you the encouragement you need to succeed and move forward. But just be aware that it's going to want to tell you what you want to hear, right? So I encourage you to like take that on a balanced perspective and be sort of a little skeptical and critical of what it has to say and ask follow-up questions just to make sure, because it might tell you something and then it's wrong, right? So just be careful with that. But let's see what it says. So it's going to tell you what it's going to do, right? To make sure it understood the question. And it's going to say that the search implementation is basic, right? And so it gives you a different ways that you could implement a more advanced functionality. right? And so if you probably don't know how all of these work, that's okay. The purpose is really just to learn, and then you can ask further questions, right? So like, let's say I've never heard of smart tokenization, right? So can you explain smart tokenization to me like I'm in middle school, right? So it will explain it to you in a very simple way, and I encourage you to put your ego aside when you're trying to learn something new like this, because there's no like dumb questions really in this environment, because it'll only help you the more curious you are to learn and ask those like dumb or like silly questions, just to sort of like develop a sort of quasi-collaborative relationship with whatever AI agent you're using, because they all have different personalities, or just like a different car. Like they all have their small little quirks that you sort of get into a rhythm with. But we won't read all of this stuff. I think it's a little bit too much for today, but I think that's a good example of how you can start with something, and then you can follow your curiosity if you have a question, and then you can move forward based on what you learn. And I think that'll be really helpful for you when I'm not here, if you're by yourself just at home on your computer and you've got this idea you're trying to make. So next, I think I want to try modifying our design a little bit. So one thing I don't like is that if I click on John Doe, it doesn't pop up anything else. So let's try making that. Can we have each contact card use a pop-up modal when clicked? Also, let's add an ability to write notes for each contact as well. Right, and so I'm gonna hit enter. Now, with the Lovable free account, you only get about 5 prompts a day, so you have to pay more. So that's why I'm sort of wanting to keep this pretty simple just for today, to get you a better idea. And while we're waiting for this, I'm fairly confident that your version of the micro CRM that you have on your own device looks different than the one that's on this screen here, right? And I think that's a good example of like each of us and our unique perspectives is more important now than ever, because we gave the AI almost the exact same prompt, and it gave a different result for each and every one of us, right? And so that means that it's really up to you to be like the curator or the tastemaker or the artist or the designer to basically like guide it and say like, what do I want my version of the micro CRM to look like, right? What does my experience tell me in terms of how this should look? What should the colors be? How should it function artistically based off of what I need and my experience and my taste, right? So you probably heard before that AI is just going to make everything look the same, and so like, what's the point in me making something? I strongly disagree with that based on what you've seen today, right? So, and that also means that I've also heard people say, AI replaces critical thinking, right? So these people, they're not critical thinking anymore. And that's frankly just not true. It's just the critical thinking is shifting to a different place, right? So it's less on like spending an hour like doing a mock-up of your designs in every single screen, and that's where your critical thinking is. And it's more, how do I have a conversation with the AI, and like, how do I think critically about the plan I direct it to make my app with, right? What questions do I ask? Like, is this right or is this wrong, or what if I do this feature? So it's more so we're all becoming managers or directors versus like individual contributors, right? And so that in and of itself is a new skill that we're all sort of learning and adapting together as we go along. So it looks like it added the functionality, so let's test it. So perfect. It looks like we've got the modal and we've got this note here. So I think that's awesome. I don't like how it has the close and the edit buttons so close to each other. So this is an example of like you've got to start reviewing the output as well as directing it, right? Similar to what like a manager does or what you do with your kid, right? So I'm going to close this for now and let's just test. And make sure that the note functionality specifically is still working. Lovely guy, too much cologne so that I can remember who it was. Right, so it says James Doe has been added to the contacts. And I confirm, and look, there's the note right there. Right, so let's test again to make sure by clicking this button up here. And so again, like you can see that there's this issue here. It's not like a broken functionality, it still works, but this modal sort of bleeds off into the edges here of the screen on mobile, and we don't really want that, right? So we could instruct it, hey, like add some padding. I won't do that right now, but add some padding on the pop-up modal on mobile, right? But next, I kind of want to show you these different buttons and tools that are here in the chat. So Lovable and other coding tools have a pretty cool feature where you can hit edit and you can tell it to do something very specific, like now that I've selected this, can you make this blue instead of yellow, right? And it will very hyper-specifically narrow in on a specific element that you want to change, right? As your app gets much bigger and more complex, you're going to want to lean on this edit feature so that it knows like hyper-specifically what it is you're trying to do. Yeah, so somebody asked, what did I click on? So in the chat interface here, you'll see that there's this edit next to the plus. Sorry, I was in the way. Thank you for asking. And so as you can see here, it changed the accent color of that to blue, but it also changed the entire accent color of the application to blue as well. And so this comes into, again, guiding and checking and making sure that you're more specific with your wording and how it's just sort of this dynamic, collaborative process, right? Yes, question? So the question was, he didn't see an edit icon on the mobile version of what he's working with. Does anybody else see that? Yeah, same. Same? No edit button for you guys? Okay. Yeah, I'm not sure, to be frank, but... That makes sense. It makes sense because it's like, how are you going to go into the interface? Yeah, somebody said that makes sense. So I mostly use it on the computer, but if I was going to take a guess, I would say that on mobile the edit function isn't there just because of how mobile works. So this is like a good example of we've all learned together by asking like one of those dumb questions, right? Like even a person like me, not to say that your question was dumb, but even like a person, even a person like me that uses this all the time, right? There's still stuff I don't know, right? And that's just the nature of this time period that we're in. Nobody knows everything, right? So Okay, so I think I want to wrap up the workshop portion here, so I'm just going to go very quickly over a few other things that I think you'll want to know about. So first off, you have a few icons up here, and they all do certain different things that are really important. You'll see this plus button if you're on desktop, right? And these are all like the core functionality things of what it will take to actually deploy this application to people. Right, so you have an analytics section, code, cloud, security, and speed. So analytics is what lets you see like who's visiting your website or who's using your website. Code lets you actually go in and see the code for yourself if you want to go in there and you feel inclined. Cloud, I talked about earlier. So this is if you need a database like Supabase, or Lovable is going to be making their own cloud software like I mentioned before, right? And so this lets you connect all of that and manage your database. So in the instance of this CRM, right, where are those contacts getting stored? They're getting stored in the cloud, right? So that when somebody accesses your website, all of the information is safely stored there. Then there's a security check that Lovable will basically have your back and make sure that your app is as secure as possible, and then there is speed. And so it will actually look and optimize your code base for you for just like basic best practices. But first, what I want you to do is I want you to hit publish. And this allows you to name what your website address is going to look like. So this is the default. If you have your own website domain, you can customize that here. You can change the title of the website. So like when you share it or in the address bar tab, it'll have that title and then the description in search results and then the image. So I'm sure you've seen when you send like a text message or a link to a website, it shows that image preview before. That's what this is right here. You can review security first, but it's okay. I'm just going to publish it for now, but I encourage you to pay a lot of attention to the security if you're going to be selling this to customers. And especially if you're handling data like people's personal information. I don't know if you've heard, there was that instance where there was this app that went super viral. I think it was to help women sort of figure out if the guy they were dating was like a good person or not. And it went super viral, and they ended up having a database leak. And so all of these women who were like super cautious and they needed help and support and security, it like backfired because somebody hacked into the system and then got all of their private information, right? So just as you're stepping into this new world, there is like with great power comes great responsibility, as I'm sure you've heard. So just the tools are there to help support you, but it's up to you to take the responsibility and make sure you're moving forward in an ethical way and a responsible way. So legalities aside, those are important too. But okay, so this is the URL. So you could go start sharing this with people, and anybody could start using this, right? You can copy it. If you have a custom domain that you linked, you could also do that as well. Right? And it was that easy, right? Now you have this live app, this live website. We did this in like 30 minutes, right? So it's really incredible. So now that we've published it, it opens up a few different things that we can do. So if I click cloud here, this is just going to explain what the Lovable private beta can do, but we're not going to touch on this now because that's not out yet. But the security tab that I just mentioned, right? So AI will specifically review your code base for known security issues, right? And so you can do a security review just by clicking this button here, and then it will do so. And this is where I encourage you to be very, very skeptical and very, very critical of the advice it's giving you, right? Because ultimately this scan, while it's helpful, right, there could potentially be things that it misses. And so you really want to have a conversation here before you start actually taking clients, for instance, to use something like this. So what it's going to do is it's going to scan everything. It's going to give you a summary, right? And this is also a great learning opportunity too. You're going to learn how to deploy these things to production based on the summary of what the best practices for security are, right? Like, so for instance, I mentioned API keys earlier. If you want to deploy like an LLM, like an OpenAI API LLM and give your app AI functionality for search, for instance, right? So one of the best practices is that API key that you take from your OpenAI account, that can't just be in the code base for anyone to just go find and search, right? Like it's stored in a secure environment variable so that no one can just take your API key, right? So you would have learned that by reading this summary, right? And you could have a conversation like, what do you mean by hard-coded secrets? Like, why is that important? You get what I'm saying, right? And that's why I said, like, approach this with a very curious mind, right? So that was the security audit. And if there's any huge, major, like, red flags, it will, like, give you a warning. Like, hang on a second, are you sure you want to publish this? You've got this huge security issue, right? So next you have speed. And so this basically allows you to optimize your app for speed efficiency. So to go back to the beginning, this is the track laying part of your app, right? So now we need to make it, we've built it, we've got the idea, we've proven it, it's all been surveyed and designed, we've explored, and now we need to scale it and make it go as fast as possible, right? And so it found some performance issues, right? And so we can click try to fix here, for instance, and we can see the screenshot that like a Google search bot would find if it was scraping your website or your web app, right? And then we can see analytics. So this tells you how many visitors your app has or your website has, page views, visits, how long they were there. Bounce rate is when they leave, basically, in the duration. So you have literally everything you need here to build and scale your own thing, whether that's you just want to make something for yourself or your family or your friends, or you actually want to go and like make a product or make a company. You have everything you need here. And so I encourage you to, if you haven't today, try these tools out. It doesn't have to be Lovable. It can be Replit, it can be Bolt, it can be Base 44, it can be any of the many, many, many different ones that are out there. OpenAI has Codex and Claude has artifacts and so on and so forth. There's tons of them. So I encourage you to play around with them if you can and see what you like, see what kind of car you like to drive personally, so to speak, and what fits for your use case. So I see that we have some questions, but just to wrap up, we're going to do a question and answer. I love that we have that. Just to wrap up, these tools are incredibly powerful. With all of this power becomes incredible responsibility as well. So just approach it in that way and approach it with a curious mind. And best of luck to you. Don't get discouraged. This is like the best time to be a builder like ever in human history. So it's a very exciting time that you're all here, and so you're in the right place. So thank you. Okay, so I think Jules here is going to run around with the microphone, I believe. So I'll start with her right there. Sorry.
I've used Lovable just a little bit in more of a prototyping way, rather than building kind of a full product. And knowing that what we built today was 30 minutes and relatively basic functionality, how would you think about if you're trying to build a product that's more complex and has a lot of features to it, in terms of, would you continue to build on the same, like example of here and have multiple functionality, or would you have separate kind of versions of it so that you can demo that kind of in a separate way? Does that question make sense?
Absolutely, thank you. I would try both. So a really good strategy would be, so let's say you have a prototype of something, right? And you saw us go through this journey of like, we directed it to do something, and then it like made a mistake, or we added features, and then we did like the security audit, and we did the performance audit, and then it came out with all of this new stuff. And so you're probably like sitting here and you're like, well, why didn't it know all of that from the beginning, right? And so like a good strategy is to ask it using the chat, can you take all of the changes and history and feedback from the security performance and copy and paste that all in the chat and say, create a new prompt for me to create this app again. And now it has all of that journey that you've gone through together that you're specifically calling out, and you can start fresh from a much stronger base now that you've provided it this additional context and you've provided it this additional direction. I hope that answered your question.
Just a quick follow-up on that one, which is sometimes when you ask ChatGPT to alter something that you've drafted, it redrafts the whole thing rather than just editing the one thing that you've asked about. So if you do exactly what you just said, is it likely to prop up an entirely different version? You're like, but wait, I liked X, Y, and Z from the old version. You've given me something that looks totally different.
Yes, and that's a good call out as well. So if there was something you really loved about what you did before, take screenshots.
Okay.
Specifically call that out. Like, I want the accent colors to be this. I want the buttons to be this. I want the layout to look like this screenshot, right? You could also just keep building off of the prototype, right? Like, there's no rule that says a prototype has to stay a prototype forever, right? And Lovable lets you duplicate projects as well, as long as it hasn't been connected to a database yet, which is more advanced, but you can duplicate the project just simply. Like, so let's say you have a prototype, you can just go duplicate it and you can start fresh. If you've connected it to your GitHub account, you can copy your GitHub, like it's called a repo, which is like the file folder where all the code is stored, and then you can start fresh with that as well. So,
Great, thank you.
you're welcome, thank you. Back there, in the red.
Hi. So I was just wondering, Andy, for the future of this, because I was really impressed with something I was able to build in 3 minutes in terms of like integration. Will there be plans for Lovable to be, integrating other applications, possibly even being a competitor, a more user-friendly competitor to Comfy AI? I would really love that.
I think that's awesome. Thank you for the question. So just to be clear, I don't work for Lovable. I'm a customer of Lovable, just like you guys are. Right, so I love this tool, and although I'm Lovable, part of their underlying technology and the AI that they use a mixture of Claude by Anthropic and also ChatGPT 5 by OpenAI, and so they use a mixture to help that underlying technology. But to answer your question, I don't know what the future product plans are of Lovable. If you go to their website, no, it's okay. I love the question. The public-facing information is they're constantly working on integrations all the time. And if you go look at their docs and their developer documents and things like that, they have a list of all of the best practices and the direct integrations they currently have. So Supabase and GitHub are two examples of integrations they have directly, right? And they have more planned for the future. So. Yeah.
Hey, I'm Professor Frank Gendamo, and we have a company called LaughMD that delivers comedy to patients because laughter is the best medicine. We have an app now. It's crap, and that's why I'm here. And so I'm first putting it out there that if anybody wants to help, please come talk to me. But you mentioned that you can publish this directly to a website. So how would we go about publishing this to a website that's registered on GoDaddy, like laughmd.app, for example?
Yeah, so in the publish section that you saw earlier, there was an option to connect your domain. If you click that, Lovable actually has one of the best implementations I've seen where it lets you connect your domain. So all you have to do is connect your domain, a pop-up window comes up and it asks you to type in what your website is, and then it will detect automatically what domain provider you're using, whether that's Namecheap or GoDaddy or whatever it is, because there's a dozen of them, right? And then it will have its own custom authentication and instructions. It's very simple and it's very seamless. So, yeah.
Okay, thank you for inventing this.
I did. I wish I invented this. Go ahead, right here. Sorry, one second. He's going to get you the mic. Thank you.
Could you explain a bit more about some of the costs associated with taking a product built on Lovable to market compared to if you were to build it natively yourself with kind of like a typical engineering team and what that might look
absolutely.
like?
I think that's a great question. Thank you. So Lovable has different plans, and it's based off of a a sort of credit prompt system, so you can give it a certain number of questions, or depending on like how big of a lift or how complex the task it has to do, it uses up dynamically like certain credits and certain amounts. And so they have like a monthly plan. I think it starts at like $20 a month for like 100 credits, and then it goes up from there. And they even have scaled out the plans for like actual like teams and companies to have multiple users with like custom amounts of credit, so on and so forth. Depending on the complexity of your app and or your website and what you're trying to do, like you could end up spending like hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of credits within like a few days, right? If you're doing this like all day, like an engineer would be, like trying to make improvements. And I have spent hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of credits. So it sounds like a lot, and you're like, oh my God, I can't spend like $200 just making this little prototype thing, right? But like, I encourage you to think about it this way. Like, traditionally, if you wanted to make like a micro CRM like this before these AI tools, you would have had to hire a developer, right? And that developer, just so, even if you were paying like an intern developer that was fresh out of college and they were just starting their career, you're gonna have to pay them like thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars just to get to this base prototype. It's going to take like a week or two, like minimum, sometimes longer, right? And so just like put that into perspective when you're thinking about price, like how inexpensive this has now become. And you know, I just want to point this out too, because everybody's afraid that like these tools and AI is going to replace them. Like if you're an intern engineer and you see this, you're like, well, great, now, you know, what, am I going to be out of the job? It's like, no, like you have just been given superpowers, all of you, regardless of your skill level, just because you can speak your ideas, right? That engineer, they've also got superpowers now, right? Because now they know all of the engineering context. So that journey we went through where it like missed things, they already know that, and they're going to start with that in their prompt. So they're not going to prototype as much as maybe you and I would if we don't know something. Do you get what I'm saying, right? So they're also going to do quite well. And right here?
If you're
Sorry.
if you're using an API integration for an LLM to, for example, in there, like power the search or whatnot, and you're making edits to the custom GPT or however you're doing that, on the LLM side, does that automatically update in the app, or do you have to redo something in the code to say, hey, refresh this connection?
Good question. So it depends. So each AI provider, whether it's like Google, OpenAI, or Anthropic for Claude, they all have API documentation, and they're like an entire section of a web portal that's designed for developers that are wanting to integrate their specific AI into their software and their own products. And so the good place to start is to like sort of like read through the documentation that's on their website, and you can even instruct Lovable. You can provide it the link to the documentation page for their API, and you can ask it to review the context, and then you can ask it to explain it to you, right? Or you can ask it to integrate the API to do this thing. So like, for instance, we had that search question, right, where we wanted like an AI search function with an LLM, right? So we could feed it the API documentation from the link, and then we could say, okay, I want to use this API in the search bar, right? And then it will do it for you automatically. And so then once it's done that and you've tested sort of that it's working, or maybe it's not, the next would be follow-up question to what you asked, which would be like, how do I change the system prompt of the AI so that it behaves in a certain way? And then it'll tell you, oh, well, the system prompt, when you have the AI's API, says this. And it would say something like, you are a helpful search assistant that, you know, is aware of nicknames in full names and is aware of addresses and is aware of my notes, so don't miss out on these different fields, right? So that's just like an example of once you feed the API into your application, you then have to instruct the AI's personality, I guess you could say, or give it instructions when it's inside of your app. I hope that makes sense.
Got it. So if I create, using this example, like I've created this custom GPT to go through and say, understand nicknames and my notes and all these great things, I'm then customizing it additionally within the app, not within, call it ChatGPT.
Yeah, so there are some settings on the developer side of the AI provider. So like if you go to the developer portal where you get the API key from, let's use OpenAI for example, there's settings that are controlled on that side in terms of what the API is allowed to do. Like for instance, how much money you give the API, right? So that's on that side. And then on the app side, on the Lovable side, there's the instructions for, you know, the personality that the AI has within your app, or the instructions that the AI does inside your app. So that's why I say it's good to start with the documentation, just to kind of get like a high level overview of, because they each sort of do it differently, right? And just be curious with the questions as well. Like, I don't understand this, or why do I need to do that? Like, so on and so forth. Right there, please.
Unfortunately, that is all the time
thank
we
you.
have. But Andy will be here later to answer all of your questions after the talk. But I'm going to hand it over to Delaney to talk about the kin.